The News at 4 begins with the tariff turmoil affecting the global economy. Thank you for joining us on WUSA 9. I'm Simone D'Alba. This historic move by President Donald Trump plummeted the stock market today. The closing bell is in less than 60 seconds. And before we get to that, here are three things you need to know right now about this global trade war. First, President Trump says there will be a baseline tariff of nearly 10% for all trading partners. This is the highest tariffs in nearly a century. Auto tariffs are now in effect. And second, experts say these tariffs could cost average U.S. households $2,100 per year. And lastly, global financial markets experienced their worst trading day since the onset of the pandemic. And despite this controversial move by the Trump administration, the White House not backing down. Here's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Listen.
The president made it clear yesterday this is not a negotiation. This is a national emergency. He's always willing to pick up the phone to answer calls, but he laid out the case yesterday for why we are doing this. And these countries around the world have had 70 years to do the right thing by the American people, and they have chosen not to. They have ripped off American workers. They have taken our jobs overseas. The president is putting an end to that yesterday.
All eyes are on the stock market, so I wanted to show you what we're seeing as the closing bell just rang for the day. Just an absolute bloodbath. Brutal day for your 401k, to put it mildly, completely in the red. All three major indices were on pace for their worst day since the 2022 inflation crisis. The Dow fell 1,600 points, or 4%. The broader S&P 500 was down by about 4.3%, hitting its lowest level since September. And we've seen tech-heavy NASDAQ plunging 6%, also hitting its lowest level since September. Now, I wanted to point this out because among the hardest hit stocks pre-market were the magnificent 7 big tech companies. So shares of Apple fell 9%, Alphabet 3%, Amazon 8%, just to give you a perspective. And the magnificent 7 lost a combined $893 billion. Apple alone saw nearly $300 billion losses in market value. Today, we do have team coverage on how the new tariffs will have impacts on you and your wallet. Let's begin with our Katie Lusso in Clarendon with some of the biggest impacts that this will have on Northern Virginia. Katie?
And Simone, the list is very long. This is going to increase prices of building supplies, ultimately increasing the cost it will be to have housing development here in Northern Virginia. It's also going to impact food costs and car costs, and not just new cars. So we are here at Platinum Auto Sales in Clarendon, and right now they're bracing for impact. The owner tells me they've only recently recovered from the chip shortage during the pandemic. Now, they sell used cars but expect to be impacted by the trickle-down effect. Increased prices for new cars means used cars will also go up in price, something the owner tells me will hurt his customers.
I know my customers, and they are obviously on a budget. That's why they're looking for a used car. And if they have to pay, 15, 20, 25% more for a car, it's definitely going to be, hurting their pockets and, their affordability.
Now, he told me tonight that there is one positive in all of this for his business, and I'm going to explain coming up at 5 p.m. In Clarendon, I'm Katie Lusso, WUSA 9.
You know, we could use some positive energy here. I hope it's something that's also positive for consumers, people who would be purchasing those vehicles. Katie, thank you. Meanwhile, in Maryland, these tariffs will have a huge impact. Lots of signature industries like seafood, poultry, auto imports are facing some big disruptions. We sent our Scott Broom to Baltimore to pick just one of those Maryland industries for reaction today. Scott is live at the Monument City Brewing Company, a craft beer maker in Baltimore. Scott, what are the impacts we're seeing there?
Well, I picked brewing because it's a traditional industry going back hundreds of years here in Baltimore. Monument City Brewing is where I am right now. And you might figure, hey,
yes,
new tariffs on European beer, right? Maybe everybody here thinks that's a great idea. Well, to tell you the truth, not everybody's celebrating here. That's because what's happening here is a really vivid example of a hometown American-made product that is really part of a global supply chain. Tariffs have just changed the equation for things like aluminum cans that they use here, and the barley and the hops that come from overseas, and predictions that might change the price on your shelves in a matter of weeks. I talked to two people here. Here's Ken Prey, the CEO of Monument City Brewing, and then you're going to hear from the sales manager, Joe Gold.
If we see our prices increase on all raw materials, whether that's aluminum, steel for equipment or kegs, raw materials such as hops or grain, which we get from different parts of the world, then we have to make a really tough decision. Do we pass that increase on to the consumer, which things are already pretty expensive, or do we cut into our profitability, which is pretty tight as it is? So there's some tough business decisions to make, especially as a small producer.
We don't know the final outcome, but we're certainly trying to brace for impact. We don't know anything. Day one of what's it going to look like? In 2 weeks, what's the invoice going to look like when the next delivery shows up? I mean, we're looking at $12 six-packs right now. It could be $18, $19 a six-pack. What is that going to do for your budget? You're not going to buy it. And what's that do for the rest of us? That crushes our income. I'm not trying to be political here at all. I'm trying to be economically sound. We're trying to stay alive. We're trying to survive in an industry that we love doing what we do.
Yeah, you get a real feel for the sort of disruption that's occurred, the anxiety that's happening here. An example is the aluminum cans inside there, those big pallets, according to commodities brokers. They've got a 25% tariff on Canadian aluminum. That's driven the pallet price of those cans up from about $1,000 to $1,300 across the country. And of course here they've got to decide whether they're going to pass that through to you on the shelf in a matter of weeks. So that's tariffs. It's a tax and a price increase that goes pretty directly to the consumer and happens fairly quickly. Of course, President Trump says it's going to help American business in the long run, but a lot of folks here are anxious about what happens between now and then, particularly at a hometown American-made business like the Monument City Brewing Company here in Baltimore. Reporting live in Baltimore, Scott Broom, WUSA 9.
Boy, you really feel for some of these small businesses being put in a really tough spot. Scott, what are some of the other Maryland industries that are just, for lack of a better word, scrambling right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, just throw a rock and you can hit pretty much anything here in Baltimore. It's one of the nation's major importing ports for foreign vehicles. So there are a huge number of employees that are involved in loading and unloading those vehicles, getting them distributed, putting them on the CSX trains, getting them out of here. That's at risk. The seafood industry in Maryland, okay, it's iconic. But the reality is a lot of the crab meat, particularly the canned crab meat we see here in Maryland and throughout the region, it comes from overseas. So that potentially disrupts prices and disrupts supply chains for seafood packers. And it goes on and on and on. It pretty much affects everything if you talk to business people here in Baltimore.
Just a little bit of grumbling going on from everyone, from the consumer to the producer to the businesses. It's tough all across the board. Scott, thank you. Well, coming up on the news at 4:30, as the stock market tumbles, President Trump's new tariffs are sending shockwaves through world markets. Leaders from Vietnam and Japan say they are fighting back. We'll have their responses in 30 minutes. Plus, how much will buying local versus imported affect your wallet? We put it to the test at some local stores.